take a look in the Ramchal, and then we'll take a minute or two. We said that each day we would talk a bit about the chashivas of Eretz Yisrael as a tikkun for the Chet HaMeraglim. Shiva Asar B'Tammuz begins the 3 week. Tisha B'Av is the culmination of the Mei HaMetzarim. And Tisha B'Av is the destruction of the first Beis Mikdash and the second Beis HaMikdash, amongst 5 things that happen on Tisha B'Av. And the root cause of Tisha B'Av is the Chet HaMeraglim. The Meraglim cried on the 9th eve, on the Leil Tisha B'Av, we don't want to go to Eretz Yisrael. Rebbeinu Shalom said, you don't want to go to Eretz Yisrael, you don't want to stay in Eretz Yisrael, you're crying, you don't want to be in Eretz Yisrael, and there's no reason for you to cry. I want to give you a beautiful land and I give you a wonderful life in Eretz Yisrael. You're crying, I'm going to give you a reason to cry on this very evening, and that became Leil Tisha B'Av. So as we mentioned yesterday, our Cook says that one of their most important tikkunim, the pairs that need to be done, the tshuva that needs to be done during these 3 weeks, is to undo the Chet HaMeraglim, which is what brought about Tisha B'Av to begin with. So we'll take a look at that in a few moments. We're in the Daas Tevunos. We're on page 46. Memvov at the bottom, Nun Hey, and paragraph 55 for those who are following the paragraphs, and Friedland, it's page 46. Amra HaNeshama, the Neshama said to the Seichel, Tichol Gam HaInyan Hazeh, please summarize what you just taught me. Page Mem Zayin, paragraph Nun Vav. Amra Seichel, the Seichel said, Zeh HaKlal, this is the rule. Shleimusa Yizborach Mitzad Atzmai Ene Musa Klal. Again, point 1 of the summary. God's ultimate perfection. His ultimate perfection in all areas. His perfect wisdom. His perfect power. His perfect chesed. All of this is completely not fathomable to the human being. A human being can only understand God on a human level, not God's essence. But because God wanted to create a world according to his midah of toiv, God wanted to create a world, he willed a world that would be on a human level, lo yoser, nothing more than that. Some etos v'gilgulei hanhacha lahavi kol habriyos al shleimus v'tikkun. He set into motion a system by which the perfectly imperfect world would be able to work on itself and come to perfection. And at some point, when we do our work, God will send Mashiach to help finish the job. V'zeh hanista shebechol hamaisa. That's hidden. We don't see God's system of hatova, of yichud. We don't see that in the anarchy and chaos that's the human vision of events. But percolating and bubbling inside every event is the ultimate good and perfection of the Bria. V'nistarim is zeh, kitzas min aktzas, mimenu miskala v'nikim mitoch hamaysim atzom. A little can be understood from the the acts themselves as we begin to try to study and understand them on a human level. We'll be able to understand the good that is inside every event. When God, as we mentioned yesterday, the pasuk in Yeshaya, and on that day, Yeshaya says, God will give sight to the blind. In other words, we're going to understand things that we don't understand today. So today, the human vision is limited, and we need to expand our vision. What Emunah does is it helps our eyesight. Emunah helps our eyesight. When we lack Emunah, we see things and We don't understand what they are. We think that they are chaos and anarchy and the bad guys are taking over the world. Just like we thought Haman was about to exterminate the Jews, and we thought that Haman was well on his way to doing so, because the great Tzaddik Mordechai was going to be hanged on a tree in Haman's courtyard. The tree was already up, it was ready to go, and that would have been the end of the story. The great Tzaddik Mordechai is going to be executed tomorrow morning. And that's the way it looked. And in a moment, Haman walked into Achashverosh's palace just at the wrong time. Achashverosh couldn't sleep, and he told his servant, read me my book of my diary, and the page flipped open about Mordechai saving Achashverosh from Bigsan and Seresh. And Achashverosh says, how did I repay him? And finally, the person says, you didn't do anything for him. And just then, the Ribbono Shalom sets it up that Haman should walk in with a request to hang Mordechai. He never even asked the question. He never got there. Because Achashverosh said, what do you think I ought to do to honor a person? And Haman thinks it's about him. We all know how the rest of the story unfolds. And that was Haman's worst day of his life. The day that he walked into Achashverosh's palace thinking it would be the greatest day of his life, he's going to get permission to finally kill Mordechai. He actually walked into the palace, didn't know it when he walked in, but he actually walked into the palace to actually have himself executed. So, to the extent that we lack emunah, we see things and we read the news. And if you were on Shushan Habira during those days, it would have been awful headlines. Decree of extermination of Jews. It's going to happen on this and this day. Haman's taking over. Haman's put a tree in his courtyard. He's going to kill Mordechai. All the terrible news and all the terrible rumors and all the terrible commentary. And the Ribbono Shalom is using it all to move chess pieces so he can checkmate Haman, Achashverosh, and the whole gang. So what emunah does is it improves our eyesight. Instead of having very narrow vision of what's happening around us, it allows us to see a bigger picture of how the Ribbono Shalom is running the world. And a sefer like Daas Tevunos helps our vision to understand that. So, Emir Hashem, the words of Yeshaya will come true. God will give sight to the blind. We're going to have a better understanding. And that's why Habakkuk says, Habakkuk says that before Mashiach comes, the central focus of Jewish life and the thing that will sprout all other mitzvahs is emunah. A person's going to have to work on his emunah before Mashiach comes. You're going to have to work on emunah. And that's the way we're going to be able to exist through these times. So when the Ribbono Shalom wants to ultimately open our eyes so we can see all these things, Mashiach's going to come, and as the Ramchal says at the end of the Sefer, I've quoted many times, Porei Simla, the Ribbono Shalom is going to open the curtain, and we're going to see the past, the present, understand what happened, and put it all together as a beautiful puzzle, and understand that we only had narrow vision for so long, and now we see the whole picture, and we can say, as we learned in Yeshaya, Otcha Hashem ki anachta bi yoshev apcha u'sanachameni. Efes rubai adai yishar meroma v'niskav l'musa klal merov omer chachmasa yisparach hanafla. Nevertheless, even after Mashiach comes, and we get this deeper understanding about how the whole world operated, it's going to be a perfect human understanding. Never will we plumb the full depths of God's plan, because plumbing the full depths of God's plan means we actually understand God's chachma. That is never, ever going to happen. Take a look at footnote 16. We mentioned yesterday we take a look at it. We're going to read it, and we'll deal with it more tomorrow. It's on page Memphov in the Friedlander print, and it's footnote 16. There's a lot of talk about the reward in the world to come. What's the reward in the world to come? What am I going to get there? Sometimes we talk about the idea of nene miziv hashchina. The ultimate reward is you'll be able to bask in the ziv, in the shine of the Shechina. Is that some kind of, what is that? Is that some kind of like, lahavdol elef alfi avdolos, you sit in the sun and you can bask in the sun and it warms your body and you can enjoy it? What is basking in the shine of the Shechina? We'll leave that nene miziv hashchina for another time, why those words are used. But Friedland is now going to introduce us to what is nothing less than an earth-shattering concept of what the reward in Olam Haba is. Now, the Rambam in Hilchas Tshuva says that there are some people in the world, and he's quoting the Muslims, there are some people in the world that think that if you do good things during your life, that you go to heaven and you'll get 70 virgins. He actually talks about this in Hilchas Tshuva. He said, this is crazy. To even talk about such a thing is crazy. What does it mean that you're going to get 70 virgins for having for living a good life in this world? That means that this world and the next world are basically the same. The pleasure of this world is going to be your reward when you get to the next world. In this world, certain men enjoy 70 women. And if you lived a life of serving Hashem, when you get to the next world, we'll fulfill your desire. We'll give you 70 women. Well, what exactly does that mean? What is the difference then between Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba? What exactly is the reward for living a life? God's going to give you 70 virgins. The whole thing is such a shtus. When you talk about it, it sounds stupid. If I dedicate my life to serving God, to having a ruchnius life, the reward for having such a ruchnius life is God will give you all the gashmias that you can imagine. There'll be 70 women and palaces. I spent my life training myself that that's not an important thing. I trained my whole life to understand that worshiping Hashem is the greatest thing, and that the women, the cars, the houses, the money, that's not the greatest thing. They're necessary to a certain extent at a certain level, but that's not what life is about. I'm not my car, I'm not my house. I am an Eved Hashem. That's what I'd like to be. So if you work your whole life at being an Eved Hashem, and you work your whole life at de-emphasizing the women and the cars and the houses and the cash, etc., God's reward is He'll give you the cash and the women and the houses. That's such a shtus. When you talk about it, it's ridiculous. And the Rambam makes this point in Hilchas Perek Tes of Hilchas Tshuva. So we're looking for a different kind of a future. Looking for a different kind of Olam Haba. And we call it Nene Miziv Hashchina, basking in the light of the Shechina. Where Friedlander says as follows: Omek Chachmasa Yisborach Eino Meskala Mitoch HaMaisa. Even at the point where God sheds light and lets us see and gives us a better understanding of how He ran the world, the past, the present, how it all fits in perfectly, we'll understand it. But the depths we'll never understand, because we can never understand the full depth of His Chachma. Hashem Yisbarach Yoser Yoyer Einenu La'ased Lavoi V'yegala Lanum Niflois Chachmasoi Ech Shahakol Hoya Ach Letovas V'sibos Lahavi Geula Shlema. Rebbeinu Shalom will allow our eyes to see all those historical events that we thought were anarchy, chaos, have nothing to do with Geula. In fact, we look at some of these events and they say they're anti-Geula. They undermine Geula. And we sometimes say, let's trash some of that history. Let's trash it. Today we're living in America. There's a very important message, what we're talking about now. I'm not getting into politics. In America, they have this thing called cancel culture. Throw down all the statues, throw down this trash. This is not a good piece of history. Throw down Thomas Jefferson, throw down Abraham Lincoln, throw down George Washington, throw down Christopher Columbus, throw down everything. Just throw it down. Just trash history. This is not good parts of history. They're trash. Better that these things should have not happened. We have a different view. Good, bad, the perfectly imperfect world is coming to perfection by God using every event, and God put the event in the Torah. Samson Rafal Hirsch, Zechron Tzadik Levracha, in Pashas Lech Lecha, talks about the fact that God put every event in the Torah. We do not cover up. We don't cover up. Moshe Rabbeinu hit the rock in Pashas Chukas, and God told him, you can't go into Eretz Yisrael. The Rebbe Shalom tells us the whole story in the Torah. Now, can you imagine? Moshe Rabbeinu was in Shamayim, and the Rebbe Shalom is instructing Moshe Rabbeinu every letter to write in the Sefer Torah, and eventually Moshe Rabbeinu is going to come down with the Sefer Torah. Either he's going to come down with one big Sefer Torah, or he's going to write it down in different parts. Machlokas in the Gemara, if Torah Megillah Nitna, or Torah Hatuma Nitna. Let's not get into that. The point is that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote the Sefer Torah. From the first letter Beis until the last letter Lamed, Leine Kol Yisrael. Let's not get into that Machlokas either. Machlokas in the Gemara, who wrote the last 8 psukim in the Torah. The last 8 psukim say, and Moshe Rabbeinu died, etc., etc. Well, who wrote those psukim? Moshe Rabbeinu wrote, and Moshe Rabbeinu died. How can you write Moshe Rabbeinu died while he's still alive? So there's a question in Gemara. Maybe Yoshua wrote the last 8 psukim. Moshe wrote it, but let's not get into that. Moshe Rabbeinu wrote the Sefer Torah. Now, can you imagine Moshe Rabbeinu being instructed by Hashem, write this letter, this letter, this letter, this letter, this letter, this letter, and this is the story of Moshe Rabbeinu hitting the rock and God castigating Moshe Rabbeinu for hitting the rock. Yan lo hemantem bi lahaktisheni. Moshe Rabbeinu, you failed to make a Kiddush Hashem, therefore you're not going into Eretz Yisrael. Imagine writing that yourself about yourself. Yan lo hemantem bi. We just spoke about Emunah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu castigated Moshe and said, Yan lo hemantem bi. You didn't have Emunah, and therefore you're not taking the Jews into Eretz Yisrael. Imagine writing that about yourself in a Sefer Torah that you know is going to be distributed to Klal Yisrael forever. Forever, I'm writing a story into the Sefer Torah about myself that's derogatory about myself. I lacked emunah. And the Rebbe Shalom says, Moshe Rabbeinu write those words, and this is going to be part of the Sefer Torah. The Samson Fowler says the Rebbe Shalom doesn't cover up anything. If there's a failing, if somebody did something that's improper, we don't cover it up and move on. The Rebbe Shalom wants us to know the exact event that happened so that we can feel and understand that we're human. We can sit around the Shabbos table and say, Moshe Rabbeinu did this and Moshe Rabbeinu said this, and this is an example for the way we are to conduct ourselves. But if Moshe Rabbeinu was perfect, we never heard Moshe Rabbeinu do anything other than the most perfect thing in the world, then your Tata Yankala sitting at the table says to you, Tati, why are you telling me about Moshe Rabbeinu and how I can be Moshe Rabbeinu? Moshe Rabbeinu was perfect. I'm not perfect. So Samson Fall Hirsch says that Baruch Hashem, we're not Catholics. We don't believe in papal and fallacy. People make mistakes, and the Rebbe Shalom doesn't cover them up. And that's why we talk about Moshe Rabbeinu. When Yankala says, Tati, how can I be Moshe Rabbeinu? You say, yeah, you can be a Moshe Rabbeinu. At your level, you can be a Moshe Rabbeinu. But Tati, I make mistakes. And Moshe Rabbeinu never made some mistakes too. He's a Moshe Rabbeinu mistake. He made mistakes. And you can be a Moshe Rabbeinu too. The Rabbanu Shalom is being megalgal everything. We're not going to trash. They call in America today cancel culture. Let's forget about the past. There's a certain past that needs to be erased from American history. Just erase it. It didn't happen. There's no part of Jewish history that's erasable. It all happened. We just don't understand why certain things had to happen. But we're not going to erase them because they're part of that greater puzzle that's going to make up Jewish history that we're going to learn to embrace when Mashiach comes and opens the curtain and we can understand how all events fit one together. We are not a cancel culture. If there's anything that's happening in America today that is showing us how different we are from the Gentile world, Shaloi Asani Goy, is that the Goyim are developing a cancel culture, and in the middle of a cultural revolution in America, which is part of a cancel culture, trash part of your history, knock down the statutes. We are a shalavicha v'yageitcha zekenecha v'yarmula. We go to our elders, our grandparents, our parents, our great-grandparents, say, can you tell us about the past, how it used to be, good, bad, just tell us about how it used to be. We want to understand, we want to get attached to our past. Our past is who we are. Our Messiah is what the Jewish people are. So we're not canceling anything. There are no events that are going to be trashed. Every event is going to be part of the Gula Shlema. Hamakas, and here are the words. If you're using my scan, then you see my scan has these words circled with big arrows there. Hamakas hasagazu hi haschar la'asid lavoi. Wow. The schar that we're going to get, la'asid lavoi, this schar that we're waiting for, this tremendous reward that's coming in the future, is God opening up the curtain and letting us finally understand all of history and how it was perfectly planned by God, how everything was necessary, how it fits together perfectly. In other words, as Yeshaya says, Osti pakachna eine ivrim, God will give vision to the blind. Suddenly we're going to be able to see and understand things we never understood. And the simcha, the joy that we're going to have from finally understanding the past, the present, and how it worked into the future, that tremendous simcha, the simcha that we unfortunately lack today. And Muna gives us some of that simcha. But the simcha that we lack today, why is this happening? Why is this happening? The world looks a mess. The world looks like it's chaos. I'm living in dark times. This is terrible. The whole world, from the chet of Daas Tovara, everything's been downhill. You had the Dor HaMabel, the Dor HaFloga, Mitzrayim, Bavel, Parasumadai, Yavan, Golas Roimi, first base HaMikdash, second base HaMikdash, the Crusades, the Muslims, Shamlaniki, Hitler, v'chulu, v'chulu, v'chulu. The whole place been a mess since the sixth day of creation. And suddenly, we're going to have a vision that's literally, there's no psychologist in the world that can do that. Suddenly, we're going to get a whole new understanding that is going to make us emotionally happy. We're going to be happy about the whole history of the world. We're going to be happy about ourselves. We're going to be happy about what part we play in the world. This is not about money. It's not about women. It's not about cars. It's about understanding yourself. Everybody today is spending a lot of money on seminars and listening to all kinds of CDs, and they're going to Steinmetzky's to buy more and more books about finding yourself. People want to find themselves. Nobody, if you want to find yourself, know where you got lost. If you can go back to the place you got lost, you can find yourself. We'll talk about that at a different time. But one of the greatest sources today that people are told what's making me unhappy is because you don't know who you are. You lack identity. You have an identity crisis. If you knew who you were and you knew what role you played, then you would feel better about yourself. You would feel like a complete person. But since you don't know who you are, and if you don't know who you are, you don't know what role you play in the community, what role you play in society, who you are in the eyes of God. Why did God put you on planet Earth? What are you supposed to be doing here? And suddenly all of that becomes very clear. Wow, Eze Geschmack. I understand my life. I understand all the history around my life. I understand all the events that occurred in my life that I look down upon. Suddenly Yosef understands why his brother sold him, becomes the viceroy of Egypt. Suddenly Mordechai understands why that tree got put up in Haman's backyard. It was meant for him, but Haman got put on it. Suddenly Amram understands why Moshe got thrown into the Yam, not to kill him, so that he would end up in Paro's house, and Paro would feed him and raise him so that he could take the Jews out of Mitzrayim, the exact opposite of Paro's plan. Eze Geschmack to finally understand every event that happened in your life, how it was God planned, and God did it in a way to bring about your ultimate good, your ultimate perfection. So Rav Friedlander says that Hamokas Hasagazu, to the extent that a human being can get to the depth of the plan, Zuhi Haschar La'asid Lavai. That is the reward that we're looking forward to, La'asid Lavai, so that we can understand ourselves, understand who we are, understand the role we play. Okay, we'll continue with this concept tomorrow. It's really a Chiddush Nor V'Oyim about what the Schar La'asid Lavai will be.